Thank you. Um, and some of you maybe have not. So I'm gonna discuss them, all the basics of them. But what they are really is HPIs are how we collect information for built environment resources within the WISAARD database. And the form is designed to capture data and eligibility evaluations for one built environment resource. So one resource is one form. There are some exceptions to this, and I refer you to the Washington State Standard, which can be found on our website, for information on any exception to that. Um, Now, each HPI corresponds to a physical location on the map in WISAARD, and they are searchable via the map, search, and resources functions. Now, obviously, we want the information to be as accurate as possible. We want good data in and good data out. Um, but we also want people to be able to find that information. So filling out HPIs properly is the best way to ensure that the data is accurate and searchable. So I'm going to go ahead and start an HPI I've got my project here, and I'm going into the inventory and evaluation. So this is an inventory I have going here, but I need to create a new historic property inventory form. And I'm not updating existing record. I'm creating an entirely new property that has not been added to the system. Um, I'm going to not enter the property name for now. I'm going to get to that once we're in the HPI, but I will enter the property address here. And this um, is a drop down. Oh, oops, wrong. 3290. There it is. The drop down comes and this is the address I'm looking for right here. Now, this is a precise address. This is a residence I'm doing. If this were not at a precise location, at a precise address, like say if it was a bridge or an outbuilding on a farm, you would select the nearest address or jurisdiction and click is vicinity. But that's not the case here. So we entered our address and we want to confirm that it's in the right spot. That is the right spot. Okay, so we have started a historic property inventory form. Now I'm going to go through, this is the information tab. You'll notice there's location map attached to these different tabs. So I'll go through the features of each feature of each tab. Now, it's very important that you get the information tab is very important because this information carries over um, to most of this information carries over to all iterations of an inventory. I'll get to that a little bit later, but historic name, this is something that is one of the searchable sections. So here, you would want the historic name. So that's the name that it went by at the time that it was built. So say for instance, it was the Bayside Cafe when it was built. So you would enter that here. Um, if it's not known, if you don't know the historic name, you use a generic term such as apartment building, commercial building, church, house, or residence. But what we do not want here ever is addresses. Please do not list addresses here. Now, I happen to know the historic name for the property that I'm creating this for, and it is the F.A. Roberts House. So we're going to do last name first. Oops, I added an extra R. F.A. A. And we already have the address. Oops, I made a mistake. FA House, FA Roberts House. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Again, this was not vicinity, otherwise that would have been, a check would appear here. So property information. This is an important one that sometimes gets overlooked. So anytime you see a pencil here, that means this field is editable. So you click on the pencil. Now these are the various types. You have your structure, site, object. It defaults to building. So if you are doing a bridge, structure, a park, that would be a site, a boat, that would be an object, but the default set's building. So just make sure that you have that one, the appropriate one selected, and hit save. Inventory information. Just a second here, I lost my place. Okay, so again, this is all editable. This does auto-populate when you create the inventory, but this can be changed. Inventory level, you would select if this is an intensive or reconnaissance. I did a reconnaissance, so I'm going to select that. Now, you can find more information on what defines intensive versus reconnaissance in the standards. For each one of these fields that I'm discussing, you can find more information in the standard. So always, when in doubt, consult them. Field site number, this is optional for use by the surveyor. And common name. So this refers to what the building is known as today, the current name of the property, if it's different from the historic name. That wouldn't apply here, but if the example I gave earlier, say the Bayside Cafe is now called the Cup and Saucer Tea Shop, you could enter that name here. Construction data. This is a drop down, and then there's a freeform section. So we have the built date for this house is 1929. And I do have documentation confirming this. Um, excuse me. If the build date is, if you're unsure or if you're relying on assessor data, then you check the circa. Assessor data is considered in approximate. Now for this property, it hasn't been moved. I don't know of any additions or remodels, so I'm not going to check those, but you can add as many of these as you want. That apply, of course, but that doesn't apply, so I'm not going to enter it. Architect and engineer field. This is another drop down for builder, architect, and you can enter as many of these as apply. I don't have the architect's name for this, but I do have the builder's name, and I'm going to enter it. Just a second. I want to make sure I spell this right. Okay, so if I did know the architect's name, I could add that here too. All that apply. Number of stories. The house that I am doing has 2 stories and a basement, but we're going to enter the 2 stories. Historic use. This is another drop down and subcategory. So this was domestic. This is a residence. This is a single family house. Again, hit save. Now, historic context. Um, this this is a selection you would make only if the property is significant in one of the categories. Now, that doesn't mean that it has to be an eligible property. It just means that it's just meant to capture an association within a context that can be queried, that one can search for. So, um, some obvious examples of what you might do for a historic context. So, if it's, say, it's a barn, you'd you would select agriculture. If it's a bridge, you would select transportation, and then that way, somebody searching for transportation related uh, properties could come, this would come up among the search results. But the more specific the association, the more meaningful. So say, for instance, somebody was wanting to do a research on um, a property significant to Filipino history, and you have a grocery store that's been owned by Filipino family for generations and frequented by their community. Then there's all these ethnic categories that you can choose from. And that way, you can get a meaningful result when you do a search here. But if there isn't if it's not really significant with any context, you would just leave this blank. This one, however, is significant in architecture, and also this is a planned community that this house is in. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to select that too. Now, current use, this is still a single family home. So you just select what applies. Characteristics. So this is another one of the add buttons, and you have all the physical characteristics that can be described. So this, I'm not going to go through all of these, but for example, foundation. This is a poured concrete foundation that this house has. Um, I'll do another one. Uh, Roof material. This house has clay tile roof. And you can select for each one of those that you know. If you don't know, you can just leave it blank. Um, Linear features, excuse me, that you only make a selection here if a linear feature defines the resource. So for instance, a canal system or a railroad line, then you would go in there and select the type, the length, and what units it's measured in. But that doesn't apply to this resource, so I'm going to leave that blank. Styles. Now, for for styles, you have to select both the category and item. So this house is a early 20th century revival. Now, if I just said that, it doesn't register anything. That doesn't work. So you need to select an item within. So here, this house is early 20th century, and it's a Spanish revival. Okay. Now changes to structure. This is another add button and drop down list where you need to select which changes you're selecting for. Change to plan. This plan is intact. Changes to windows, slight. Changes to cladding, intact. Now here, there's a selection for changes to the interior. I do not know, so I am not going to make a selection there, but you can select for all four if you have the information. So individual, national, state register status, district, national, state register status, and thematics. These are all for DAHP use. They're maintained by DAHP. So if a property is listed in the National Register, it will say the name of the district and whether or not it's contributing. Always check, of course we try to make sure that that's accurate, but you always want to check the register nomination to confirm that information. Now, the local register districts is one that can be filled in. And so you just put the name of the property, the date listed, and the other information that is pertinent. And you'll want to always, confirm the register status with the local government before entering anything there. But this property is not on any register, so it's not on a local register, so I'm not going to fill that out. So now I have made my, checking, make sure I have everything I want as it should be. So this tab, information tab's all done. Location data tab. Now this information auto-populates when you select the address. This parcel data belongs to the counties and it's not maintained by DAHP. So there's really no need to do anything with this. Now the map tab. So this is where our house is and it is on the right spot. But if it were not, say we're trying to, like I'd given the example of being an outbuilding that's not at the exact address. If you want to move this, click on it and it turns blue and this little trash can appears. Delete that and it goes away. And you want to draw it in the correct spot. Hit your draw icon, go to the correct spot, which it already was on, and hit Save Edits. Now, if this were a linear resource, like the examples I gave, I believe, were a canal system or railroads or a road, let's see. Use this feature to draw lines. I mean, most of the things are going to be dots, but there are some linear resources that are recorded. So in that situation, you can do a line. Double click to terminate it. But that's doesn't apply to this resource, so I'm going to click on it and get rid of it. Just wanted to show you all how to do a line. So we've confirmed that we're in the right location, so we're all good on the map tab. Attachments. Now, this is where you're going to add photos and other information that relate to the property. So oops. So we want to have clear centered photos from all accessible angles. If the property is not visible from the right of way, assessor photos can be used, but try to get photos of all angles of the property. So I'm going to drop some in there. Okay, so boom, there it is. There's our little Spanish Revival house. You'll notice over here, I want to draw your attention to the attachment information. And there's a check here for primary. That means that when you refresh here, that means when you go to the main information page, that is the photo that's going to show up. So you'll want that to be a photo that gives the most information about the house. You're not going to want to have your east elevation photo in there. So you can go in and check and uncheck the primary to be sure that you've selected the one that you want. I think this one's a pretty good primary image. So we have images from all angles. It's an oblique. But we also highly encourage historic images. And I have some historic images here. Just going to go ahead and add all the rest of my images and documents. Uh, and did I already do this one? Okay, so um, we have in here a historic image. This was, let me make sure I got documents. I want to add one more thing, sorry. Okay, so I've added some historic images and documents here, and I want to just kind of uh, explain why and what's going on. This is a side sewer card. This is just one of the many resources that you can use to confirm build dates because side sewer inspections happen close to when a house is ready to, a property is ready to be occupied. Um, this is the address. This is the name of the builder. Sometimes this is the name of the owner. So don't assume that sometimes it takes a little more information. But there's the date. So that's how I got the builder name. There's a little information about the builder that I found in an article that he's a Seattle developer and he's well known. Um, I have added a plat map of the neighborhood because I feel that this property I believe it's identified a historic district. So I've included this historic plat map with its little highlight where the house is. I also included the directory where I found the name of the person living at the address. This is the building permit card. It only had the date. So that's why I looked for some other information. This is a historic photo of the site, which I think is just a wonderful photo. The house isn't built yet, but I've added the address here. This is where the house was. You get a lot of information from this photo about the setting. Look, there's the Fremont Bridge back there open up, and there's no Aurora Bridge yet because this photo's from 1927. Um, and then the photo of its setting today. Here's our house, and all of those houses that were in that photo are still extant today. Now, this is a PDF that I added. If the historic photos, or newspaper articles like this one, they can be added as photos. But if it's JPEGs. If it's too big, though, you can like this historic property card. Um, I added it as a PDF, and then you can enlarge it and then you can actually read it. So close that out. So all of this information, you know, you might say, well, add why add things like the directory and stuff? Why not put those just in your bibliography? And the reason is that everything that goes into the narrative tab, none of that is searchable. So and it only stays with one iteration of the inventory. It doesn't stay with the property. And I'll explain what that means a little bit later, but the attachments carry through to every iteration. Right now, because I created this new property today, there's only one inventory here. But so I like to include in the attachments all information that relates to the property. And because this property, I believe, is in a district, I I put that information about like within that context in the attachments as well as much as possible. Um, so and not if a building is on the register, the nomination documents will automatically they will already be in the attachments if it's a listed property. Um, so what we don't want here, we don't want photos taken like from a vehicle where you can see the side mirror. We don't want photos of just if the house is got just covered in bushes in the front and all you can see are bushes. We don't want that. Like I said, you can use an assessor image. They usually have clear images if that's all that's available. Google Street View can be uh, a good source if you can't find anything better, and especially if there are previous dates available of the photo. It can be a good resource to document changes since 2008. Um, but please do not upload reports or any project related um, documents to the attachments. Okay, so the narrative tab, like I said, text within these fields is not searchable, which is why accuracy on the information tab is so important. So this is just a free text, free form text. You This is in the statement of significance. Really, the content that's going to go in here depends on the purpose and goal of the recordation. So a lot of these are going to be regulatory review. So for that type of survey, you would hear the integrity of the resource, as well as the significance and eligibility under the National Register criteria should be discussed here. And then when you're done, you hit save. The physical description. Um, so, oh, also, I meant to mention in the statement of significance, the presence or not of a district should be discussed here, um, and whether or not the resource is contributing. The statement of significance should focus on the resource alone. It should not discuss the project. And you know, for more information on what should be discussed here, again, consult the standards. Excuse me. Physical description. It's pretty somewhat self-explanatory. So you describe the resource's physical characteristics, the materials, and you can take a deeper dive into any integrity loss that was referenced in the statement of significance. And this is also where you can expand on physical changes that were recorded on the information tab um, that these here. For example, if you had selected changes to Windows moderate, um, you can add here, you can expand on that by adding information about which windows were changed and how. So, for instance, 2 of the 6 windows on the rear facade were replaced with vinyl sliders. So that's what goes into the physical description. And in your bibliography, you can list, this is where you would list all the resources you consulted, excuse me, including building records, uh, newspaper articles, books, previous survey reports should all be referenced here and then saved. Um, and then the URM tab. This is a new feature in WISAARD. This is part of an effort with emergency management to identify unreinforced masonry buildings. This is not for cultural resources reporting. So there's no need to complete this. The fields are editable. If you're an architect or an engineer, or if it's obvious to you that it's an unreinforced masonry building, you can enter information, but it has to be confirmed by emergency management. So, probably just best to leave that alone. And finally, the evaluation tab. So the top here, the surveyor agency information, this is where the consultant or, the lead agency's recommendation on National Register eligibility is entered. And you want to be sure that the selection reflects whatever you discussed in the statement of significance. So if in the statement of significance, you said you believe that you're recommending it eligible for the National Register, you would check that. This property, I'm recommending is located in a potential historic district and that it contributes. So I would select all of those to match what I had said in the statement of significance. So obviously, if you didn't think any of those things have applied, you don't check them. But just always double check just to make sure, because you'd be surprised at how many times those don't actually match. This is something that maybe people just kind of forget about toward the end. The SHPO evaluation history. This shows the records of determination, which projects this has been involved in, project inventories it's been added to. This, of course, is a brand new one, never been recorded before, so there is no inventory history. So I'm going to go to one that has an inventory. I'm going to jump for a minute over here to another building. And draw your attention over here to this inventories section. So the it's DAHP policy to reevaluate for every 10 years. So if something was last evaluated in 2015, it would be due to be reevaluated if it's in 2025. So over here, now, when I said that certain information carries over, stays with the property, and some stays with the inventory, I'm going to show you what that means and why I feel it's important to have things in the attachment um, that you might just put in a bibliography. So the attachments stay the same. Here's my inventory. All these attachments stay the same. 2012 inventory. Information changes a little bit. Field recorder information changes. So this 2015 inventory, Kenny Gunn, the 2012 inventory, Amy Sheridan. Most of the information stays the same. The characteristics do not. You see this 2012 has that filled out. This one, oh, this one does. This one does not. So just be mindful of that you can kind of toggle around these. The narratives, I have entered nothing different. These do not carry over. So you just want to be sure that you're aware of that. Um, and so the SHPO evaluation history, um, this is an interesting one. It was determined not eligible when it was connected to this project in 2008, but then determined eligible in 2014. So if this were added to another project today, project inventory today, it would be due for a reevaluation because it's been over 10 years. And this building is also a good example of why we reevaluate after 10 years. So this was last evaluated uh, 2015. But in 2019, it had a major addition. Its common name is no longer the Old Spaghetti Factory, so I did not, in my latest, the most recent, I did not enter that. It's actually called Ainsworth and Dunn again. And it has had a major addition. This is a rendering of the work that was done in 2019, what it looks like today with this addition that is what used to be the parking lot, and then a rooftop addition to the historic building. So um, good example of why we reevaluate after 10 years. So I'm going to go back to my property that we were working on, our little house here. We're going to make sure we have all the correct information. Obviously, I would have dropped text in here if I were filling it out. Make sure we have all of the, oh, that was weird, attachments that we want. Map is correct. Yep. So if once we're satisfied that all of our information is correct, you hit submit, and it is now part of our property inventory and it's ready for review. Now, obviously if I were reviewing this, and this is where you add our concurrence, but I'm not going to, this is not part of a project, so I'm just going to review complete this, and that's it. So that's how you create, fill out a historic property inventory form. And now when somebody wanted to search or some property with any of these fields, this house would come up within the search. So yeah, that's it. Any questions? Do we have questions in the
We have one
in
question in the chat, which
mm-hmm.
I answered already. Alana says, what is the best way to record in the HPI multiple historic names? And I said, you can add all the names in the same field. In the historic name field, just use forward slashes to separate the names.
Yeah, and Kim, that reminded me one thing I forgot to mention about names. And I will just go ahead and share my screen again so you can see what field I'm talking about. In the historic name field, if you are naming complexes, so like I said, there's one form, one recording a farm property that has multiple buildings on it. Um, it's called the Smith Farm. The proper way to name each thing, we don't want you to say just building one, building two. We name specifically um, um, Smith Farm dash house. And if there's a barn for that inventory, you name it Smith Farm dash barn, and so on and so forth. Shop building, whatever. So that's how you name complexes. So I meant to mention that and I didn't. Um, so if there's any questions about that. But again, you can consult the standards for um, details about nomenclature. Any other questions?
William asks, what is the preferred format for the bibliography? The answer, William, is that there is no preferred format for the bibliography. Sometimes, you can just drop in a web link, if that was what you had. So we're not too strict on that. Just enough information that we can go to the record and find where, the resource is the answer.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Um, oops. Okay, I'm pulling up my. Okay, well, there's no other questions. Thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you can join us again next month for Maddie's discussion on project creation.
Thank you, Maureen. Thanks,
Mhm.
everyone. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.